Yo, what's up guys? RyGo here from Kite. So a while back we did a video on learning how to hydrofoil behind the boat, and with a few seasons under our belt, we wanted to do something that was a little more concise and to the point. So we're going to do an updated version and break this down step by step on everything you need to know to get started in hydrofoiling, whatever your sport. Hydrofoiling is huge now and it spans several water sports, and it's not hard to see why. So whatever you're practicing, whether it's kiteboarding, wakeboarding, or surfing, hydrofoiling will expand the conditions that you can ride in. So surfers can ride waves that never actually break, kiteboarders can get out in sub 10 knots, and if you're a wakeboarder, you can now ride ropeless behind the boat for up to like 100 feet. And hydrofoiling, it's one of those sports where it's whatever you make of it. So for some of us, it's just a chill sport to do after your sport with your friends or family while relaxing on the boat or on the beach. And then for others, it's a new discipline to push their own personal boundaries or even the boundaries of the sport. With hydrofoiling being so new, we still don't quite know what's possible, and that makes it exciting and appealing to a lot of people. So whatever your sport or reasons for getting into hydrofoiling, this guide will walk you step by step on the process of learning behind the boat, and then you can take it to your sport. Let's get to it. Oh, and one more thing before we get going. Like all of our tutorials, I'm going to link in a written guide and a free PDF that you can download for your phone. So click the eye icon in the upper right hand corner of your screen and you can get that and take it out with you on your next session and review everything that you need to know. So for step one, let's talk about the types of boats that are needed. And the good news is, for wake surfing with a hydrofoil, you don't necessarily need a dedicated wake boat. And while that is awesome, almost anything that kicks up a wake will work. And this is in reference to ropeless wake surfing. So if you have like an old 90s Mastercraft or something like that, that would work. And generally the smallest wake that you could go hydrofoiling on without the rope would probably be the same as the smallest wake that you could go wake surfing on, give or take, depending on what wing you have. Now if you just want to learn for another sport, something like kiteboarding or surfing, the good news is you can foil behind anything. So a boat with an outboard motor, a jet ski. I've even seen videos of people getting pulled on hydrofoils by electric skateboards along a pier. So as long as you have the right wing, pretty much anything that pulls you, you're going to be able to learn on. And something we've been telling people for a while now is if you do want to learn how to hydrofoil, you can get a lot of practice just getting out there behind anything, whether it's your friend's jet ski or a pontoon boat or whatever it might be that you have access to. And then you can spend time working on all the different foil skills, whether it's your foot placement, getting up on a plane, learning to control the wing, and you can even let go of the rope and just work on pumping out until you fall into the water. So time on the water is most important when developing any skill. So if you are a surfer or a kiteboarder who does want to learn, the boat is definitely the best place to start. So for part two, let's talk about the foiling equipment that's needed. And as a general rule, you should learn on the wing that you plan on using in your sport. So if you're going to get into wake surfing, use the wing that you plan on using for wake surfing, obviously. But if you're a kiteboarder or a surfer, it's okay to start with the wing that you're going to be using in your given sport. And this is where you can learn on any boat, any ski, whatever it is that's going to give you a pull. You can learn the little nuances of your foil and just get used to practicing that right now. But if you do want to get into ropeless wake surfing specifically, you are going to want a wing that is made for this. So something larger and more stable, something like the Slingshot H2 or the H4 or the Infinity 76 would be a really good example of ropeless wake surf wings. And this is where you'll want to be if you're going to get into that side of the sport. Now aside from getting the right wing, you do want to think about your mast and the board that you're going to use for your sport. So when it comes to the mast for foiling behind the boat or any other sport, right now most people are starting to learn on something like a 24-inch. And a few years back, we had the option for like 15-inch mast, but most of us found those to be too short and you progress out of them very quickly. So starting on the 24 is a great place to start. And then that actually crosses over really well into some other sports. So there are a lot of dedicated kiteboarders that are using the 24-inch mast. There are surfers who are paddling in the waves and using the 24-inch mast. And then when it comes to the boat, the standard is now somewhere around 24 to 28-inch, which is kind of becoming the more standard, most popular mount for surfing. And that's what most people are actually sticking with and using. So the only time where you might want to consider a longer mast now is if you're a kiteboarder who's riding somewhere with deeper waters, a larger shore break, So it's interesting to see where the mast development has gone and what people are trending to. But if you start on a 24-inch mast, it's a great place to learn, and then you may or may not ever upgrade or just change up to a different size mast. So when it comes down to the board, again, I recommend that you actually learn on the board that you'll be using in whatever your chosen sport is. So if you're a kiteboarder, pick whatever board you're going to be using specifically for the kite and then take that on the boat. And the same thing for anybody who's surfing. And there's actually a lot of crossover here as well. So a lot of kiteboarders or surfers would use like a wake surfing specific board and then take that over to the other sports. And then as far as sizing goes, generally they're anywhere from like 3'6" to 5 feet, depending on what you want to do. And you'll see some guys out on the boat on the really small boards, and then as well you'll see them out on some of the larger like wake surfing boards. And this comes down to personal preference and what you want to do. So if you want to get into the wake surfing, definitely get a wake surf specific board. If you want to get into surfing in the waves, there are wave specific boards, and same thing with kiteboarding. There's a full spectrum of boards. So as a general rule, you're going to want to practice and learn on whatever board is dedicated to the discipline that you want to practice. And on to another important point about the equipment is you do want to be safe. So obviously if you're behind the boat, life jacket is mandatory. You want to have a spotter. A good driver goes a long way. It's not necessary if you don't have access to one and you just want to learn for another sport. But if you're wake surfing, it can make a really big difference just having somebody who knows how to gradually speed up the boat and maintain good control. And one other thing to consider is you probably will want to wear a helmet while learning. And one other optional piece of equipment would be foot hooks or foot straps. And you can hydrofoil strapless, but when you're learning, we usually recommend that you start with 2 foot hooks, one on the front and one in the back. And what this does is it gives you a bit of grip, so you have something to hold on to with your feet and kind of control the board as you're figuring it out. And when you fall, you don't want to be connected to that board. So if you're strapped in, it can make for some harder falls. So if you have the foot hooks and you do fall, you can just eject right out of the board and get away from everything. And another note on setup is the placement of your mast. So while you're learning, as a general rule, you want to place the mast as far back as possible. And what this does is it stops you from unconsciously coming up onto a plane. And as you gain experience, you can progressively start moving that mast forward and just find the sweet spot for whatever board you have. But back to that point of while you're learning, move it all the way back, as far back as possible, and then just experiment with your foot placement as you're learning to control the wing and the board that you have. So on to step 3, getting started. One final note before we get to it. You should have an intermediate level of experience with water sports, so whether that's wakeboarding or even surfing or kiteboarding are gonna go a long way here. But if you've never done any of that before, you don't want to just start off on the hydrofoil. So spend some time on a regular wakeboard, or if you do have something like a wake surfing board, a lot of them will come with fins. So just get out without the foil and learn how to use the board first with the rope and get the basics of riding behind a boat dialed before you try getting up on a hydrofoil. So once it's time to get going, have the driver put the boat into gear or slowly idle forward. And while the line is tightening up, you can actually use this pressure pulling you forward to get your feet onto the board. And you're going to want to keep the board perpendicular to the rope and the boat. Once you're ready, you're going to want to get into the riding position. So you're going to bring your knees close to your body and keep that rope close with your arms bent and just square up with everything. And once you're in this tucked position, give the driver the signal and have them slowly accelerate forward. And I probably can't emphasize this one enough. You want to very gradually and slowly accelerate the boat forward and aim for something like 8 to 12 miles per hour. And this is going to vary depending on the board, the rider, and the wing that you're using. Now as the line goes tight, while you're in this tucked position, you're going to want to let it pull you up and forward. And you're going to want to keep a lot of pressure on your front knee. And this is what's going to stop the board from rising up onto a plane, onto that wing. And this is actually the opposite of probably any other sport you practice. So if you kiteboard or you wakeboard, you're probably used to putting a lot of back foot pressure to get up onto the board. And with hydrofoiling, you want to let the rope pull you forward into the riding position in a kind of in a semi-squat with a lot of pressure on that front leg just to keep that board flat on the water. And as a general rule, if you're new, it's a good idea to get out of the wake in the choppy water right away. So if you have the ability to, try to just kind of slowly edge out and get into the flats, and then practice where the water is smoother and flatter. So if you try to do this in that turbulent water between the wakes on the boat, it's going to be a lot more difficult. So while you're learning, make sure you're using a long enough rope that you can actually get out into the smoother, flatter water and make the experience easier for yourself. Now what you want to do is just spend a good amount of time riding out here and getting comfortable turning the board, maneuvering a little bit while keeping it flat on the water. And don't even worry about getting up onto a foil yet. Just get comfortable riding your board and riding behind the boat. And once you're ready, you can start experimenting and just kind of coming up onto a plane by putting a little more pressure on your back leg, and start experimenting and just rising and coming back down slowly. And this is a really slow movement, and it's just a matter of shifting your weight from your front knee to your back knee. So start shifting your weight back a little bit. You can even move your back foot back a little bit further, or your front foot back just a little bit further, and experiment with just rising and coming down. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to shoot the foil up and slam back down. And if that does happen, just dive away and get away from the foil. But try to make everything smooth and gradual, and just little hops up and down, and just learn how to get up onto the wing and spend quite a while here just getting used to rising and getting used to your wing and how it rises. Now for the final step here, you just want to get comfortable with your foil. So if you spend a good amount of time riding in the flats, you can start experimenting with edging back into the wake. So when it comes to the wake, a good place to start would maybe be like the second wake back, and just start cutting into it and then feeling the wake push your wing underneath your feet, and carve around, cross wake to wake, and just get as comfortable as possible with your foil. Really master all of the basics. And then pretty quick here, I think we're gonna do another video on learning how to ride ropeless behind the boat. So stay tuned for that. But otherwise, that's pretty much everything you need to know for getting started behind the boat. And if I missed anything, don't hesitate to ask us in the comment section of this video. And if you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and make sure you click that eye icon in the upper right hand corner of your screen, and I'll include a free PDF that you can print out and put on your phone so that you can take it onto the boat with you or the beach, and when you're learning, you can review all these steps. So until next time, this has been RyGo.